Assalamualaikum. Today, the topic that we are going to discuss is graph and charts. Before we jump into the topic, let us introduce ourselves. My name is Noor Arisa Nazifa binti Azmi. My metric number 03 DSP 201007.
Hi, my name is Nisa Tiani binti Zulkifli and my number metric is 03 TSP20F1002.
Hi, my name is Anisa Ali binti Ajman Ali. Metric number 03 DSP 20F1006.
Hello, my name is Selinia Spagdi, anak perempuan Mana. My metric number is 03 DSB 20F1011.
We are from class DSP 5A, so without wasting any time, let's move on to the graph and charts about suicide. As you guys can see, this chart shows the about suicide.
First of all, I'm going to explain about the introduction of suicide. Death by suicide is an extremely complex issue that causes pain to hundreds of thousands of people every year around the world. The objective of this data entry is to contribute to an informed, open debate about ways to prevent suicide. If you're dealing with suicidal thoughts, you can receive immediate help by visiting resources such as suicide.org or by calling 1-800-SUICIDE in the United States. Every suicide is a tragedy. The World Health Organization, WHO, and the Global Burden of Disease Study estimate that almost 800,000 of people die from suicidal every year. And one or two, that's one person every 40 seconds. With timely, evidence-based interventions, suicides can be prevented.
Why we choose suicide as our title? Suicidal thoughts, much like mental health conditions, can affect anyone regardless of age, gender, or background. In fact, suicide is often the result of an untreated mental health condition. Suicidal thoughts, although common, should not be considered normal and often indicates more serious issue. Nearly 1 people worldwide commits suicide each year, with anywhere from 10 to 20 million suicide attempts annually. Also, suicide is the first leading cause of death for people 10 to 24 years of age. Suicidal thoughts are a symptom, just like any other. They can be treated and they can be improved over time. Suicide by gender. In the charts here, we see suicide rate broken down by gender group. These rates are given as the number of suicide deaths per 100,000 people in a given demographic. Suicide rate in men are just over twice as high as for women in Malaysia. Suicide rate in men are just over twice as high as for women. These charts compare suicide rate in men shown on the y-axis versus rate in women shown on the x-axis. The gray line here represents parity. Countries that lie along this line would have the same rates in both men and women. Country which lines above the gray lines has higher rate in men and instead of for country below the line. Here we see that all countries lying above the gray line. That means that across the world, suicide rates are higher for men than for women. Suicide rate by age. Suicide is one of the leading causes of death in young people. But this does not necessarily mean suicide is more likely to occur in young people than old. It's largely a reflection of the fact that older populations also die from many other causes. We look at causes of death in people aged 70 years and older, most die from disease and cancer. In the chart here, we see suicide rates broken down by age group in Malaysia. For the age of 5 to 14, the suicide rate is 0.13%. For the age of 15 to 25, the suicide rate is 16.40%. For the age of 25 to 24, the suicide rate is 24.20%. Also, age of 45 to 54, the suicide rate is 17.0%. Age of 55 to 64, the suicide rate is 10.50. And lastly, age 65 and above, the suicide rate is 7.10.
Now let's move on to the death by method. One of them are death caused by firearms. Firearms are one of the most common suicide methods globally. They are responsible for approximately 8% from global suicide death, but they play a much larger role in some countries. In the map here, we could see difference in the suicide rate from firearms across the world. It is expressed as the number of suicide deaths per 100,000 individuals in a given population. What stands out clearly is the very high firearm suicide rate in the United States. At over 6 deaths per 100,000 is more than 10 times greater than many countries across Europe. In the UK, for example, this rate is more than 30 times lower. From this chart, we could also see that Japan is the only country with the most stable data that remain constant throughout the years. Furthermore, the amount of deaths fell steadily from 1990 to 2010 in Canada. The global burden of disease study estimates that over 24,000 died from firearm suicide in the United States in 2017. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention provides similar estimates, 23,000 deaths in 2017. The number of homicides by firearms in the same year was 40,000. This means the number of suicide deaths by firearm greatly outnumbered those from homicides. 60% from firearms deaths in the United States are from suicides. Next is method by pesticide poisoning. 40 million have died from self-poisoning from the pesticides over the past 50 years. One of the most common methods of suicide is deliberate poisoning from pesticides. Research by David Gunnell and his co-authors estimates that in 1990s and early 2000s, as much as 30% of suicide globally were the result of pesticide poisoning, most in low to middle income countries. The issue of pesticides poisoning has, however, received much less attention as a preventable health outcome. 1 in 7 suicide deaths are from pesticide poisoning, partly owing to restrictions and the banning of pesticides, alongside overall decline in suicide rates in countries where pesticides were widely used. Suicide rates from pesticides have declined in recent years. They are, however, still high. In the bar graph here, we see estimates of the share of suicide globally and regions that were the result of pesticide poisoning. The research was carried out by Emma Mio et al. 2017 based on systematic review of WHO records and the literature. 30.7% around in 7 suicides in the world were the result of self-poisoning from pesticide in 2014. This were approximately 110,000 deaths. In some regions, this share was much higher, almost half across the Western Pacific, such as China, Malaysia, Vietnam, and the Pacific Islands, were from pesticides. Pesticide poisoning was also in common methods in Southeast Asia, and in Latin America, it was much less common across Europe, North America, and the other high-income countries.
Hi, I'm going to explain about suicide cases in Malaysia. I think Malaysia is one of the countries that popular with suicide cases, even though other countries' suicide cases are more than Malaysia. Okay, suicide rate from 2000 to 2019. This graph is by gender, which is female and male. In this graph, it shows that male is more than female. In 2000, female cases is 2.3 and male cases is 7. While in 2002, female cases is 2.1 while male cases is 6.8. In 2002 to 2003, female cases decreased by 2.1 to 2.2. But in 2005 until 2014, female cases is same. For male, in 2013 to 2019, female cases decreased greatly from 6.8 to 9. Suicide rate in Malaysia by 2000 to 2019. Suicide mortality rate is the number of suicide deaths in a year per 100,000 populations. Malaysia's suicide rate for 2019 was 5.7, a 5.56% increase from 2018. Malaysia's suicide rate for 2018 was 5.4, 0% increase from 2017. Malaysia's suicide rate for 2017 was 5.4, a 5.88% increase from 2016. Malaysia's suicide rate for